So I'm obviously not a caricature. Well, it depends on who you ask, I guess, but now I am, yeah. Let's see if I can, I also have to say that my anxiety is very high because I'm using somebody else's laptop and somebody else's pointer, and that's giving me agita, but that's a whole other thing. So, I'm going to cover a couple of things. The slides up here are not correct. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to go over a little bit about my team because it impacts why I did this and why I'm doing this talk. And then a little bit of the overall problem of what I'm attempting to solve, and what our process at StarTree is now and sort of what it's hoping to be, and then a little bit about how I built it. And since I recently learned that it's rude to like tap on the forehead and say skip intro to people, I put this little row of dots so you can see how far along we are and you can see how long you have to actually put up with this, okay? So, and my Twitter handle is down there in the corner as well, so that was a great point. I did that just between talks. So currently, there's 3 advocates. I am hiring. I have 2 open positions. See me if you're interested, especially if you live in India. So I have 2 open positions for developer advocates on my team. But what we do, of course, is content creation, blog posts. We also do these recipes, so we don't typically just answer a user question. They ask, how do I do this? And we try to say, well, what problem are you solving? Okay, and now we can go help you solve that problem by writing what we call a recipe, which is a way to solve that problem, not just answer your question, because if we answer your question, you're gonna come back with another question. And often the question's wrong anyway, because I'm trying to do something, and it's like, well, you know, what are you trying to achieve? Oh, well, we can do it this way instead of just answering your question, right? And then we're conference speakers, and we do cross-functional collaboration within the company. So we have stakeholder meetings that go across the company and all sorts of other stuff. So that's kind of the background of why I wrote this talk and why I'm doing this. For conferences and CFPs, again, this talk is not really about, if you're running a conference, how you manage CFPs. And it's not about if I want to submit talks, how do I submit talks for, you know, how do I do that? It's really about how I manage for my team what CFPs we're responding to, what conferences we're going to go speak at, who's going to go speak at them. And so we try to have now this curated list of conferences that people are submitting. Hey, there's this conference here. Well, does that make sense for our company? Does that make sense for our team? Is this something that we can support? So first of all, we curate the list of incoming conferences. So it's not just conference palooza, right? And we give notifications to people that are interested in those topics that, hey, we've got an open CFP now, right? There's this conference coming up if you want to submit. So it's not up to individuals to go find conferences that excite them. There's actually a notification service that can tell them, hey, we've got this conference coming up and it's in an area that you're interested in, so maybe, you know, think about it. Also building a curated list of internal speakers, because not just DevRel needs to speak, right? In fact, it's really handy to have people other than just the developer advocates out speaking. Sometimes it's really helpful to have the engineers out speaking if they can do public speaking well, right? Sometimes you want marketing going to speak because it's that kind of conference. It just matters what kind of conference you have. And what we're building is, of course, a library of talk abstracts and a library of talks and slides. And I will add to that those are currently under development. And the last thing we do is booth duty, but we try to avoid that. So I put this on a limited basis, contingent on availability, and hopefully we don't have any, because we don't like doing that. So for speaker services, we try to provide speaker training because, again, we may be sending an engineer. An engineer may say, hey, there's this great conference. I want to go speak at it. I have an idea. Great. We'll go out and we'll help you fill out the CFP. We'll help you write a successful CFP. We'll help you develop a talk. We'll give you help with your slides, and then we'll be an internal sort of audience for you to practice your talk, and so we can help you be a better speaker. This is how we get DevRel out of being the only people that can talk, right? All right, so let's get to this part, which is kind of what the talk was all about. All that was sort of to give you the background of why I did this, right? Could have avoided the whole talk. I asked ChatGPT to tell me how to manage CFPs in 50 words or less, right? And it wrote this blindingly obvious sentence, right? That create a system. Oh, that's easy. We'll just do that, right? For organizing and tracking information, set priorities, delegate tasks, and regularly communicate with team members and stakeholders. It's like the, the mission statement generator that was out on the web for years, where you could go and it would put a bunch of random buzzwords together. So I think that's actually what ChatGPT is actually just doing, is putting random buzzwords together. So to level set a bit, we need to handle conferences and CFPs for the whole company. It's not just for DevRel. It's not just conferences that we want to go to because we've never been to Prague, right? It's not just conferences that we think we can speak to. It's what's appropriate for the company. What are the company's goals? What's our technology, and where do we want to be seen? And there's an almost infinite number of conferences. And if you've ever tried to find give me a comprehensive list of conferences on this topic, you'll never find it because it's not there. And everybody finds different lists of conferences, right? And for each conference, there's all sorts of data that we want to collect so that people can submit to it. We need to know the conference website. We need to know the dates. We need to know the CFP website because it's often different than the conference website. Thank you, organizers. We need to know when the CFP closes. We need to know all this other stuff. What market is it in? What country is it in? All these sorts of things. We need to keep track of them. And all of that is a nightmare if you're just trying to sort of do it ad hoc. So I want to introduce you to the spreadsheet that you're all familiar with, right? Go spreadsheet. No way to manage this for everybody outside your group. It's almost possible, and no offense, Karine, this is your spreadsheet. No offense. But you'll notice that there's all sorts of columns where there's just nothing, and sometimes there's stuff, and sometimes, because you can't really control what people put in a spreadsheet, right? They'll just put something in there. And yes, you can put a Google form on the front of it, but then, that's just one, right? So I apologize for making you look at that, but I made it worse. So I moved from a Google spreadsheet to an Airtable base, and it's horrifying. This is not even the whole thing. It goes on like another page off the side here. It's a nightmare. But the really nice thing is that nobody has to see it, right? That's why I did it, was that I didn't want anybody to have to look at it. I wanted to get all the data that I could get about everything and then not force people to see it. So that's why. So Google Sheets versus Airtable, why I chose this route. So yes, Forms front end, right? Oh, this is working in a different way than I thought, than it's supposed to. There we go, sort of. Not really. Interesting. Absolutely not the order that was supposed to happen in. Okay, so Google Sheets, you can put a forms front end on, right? And there's all sorts of sorting options. It's a spreadsheet. You can do almost anything with it. And you can link between different sheets to link the data in different ways. And that's all great. What it lacks is this ability to present varying views of what the data is to make it simple, and integrations for notifications and things like that. And that's why I took this spreadsheet and moved it all over into this much worse spreadsheet. So what I can present to the company is this on our internal web. I can present this calendar of December, and it shows some color-coded conferences that are coming up. Right? This is much simpler. It's much easier to see. I will also say that when our CEO started seeing this, he said, yeah, but I want to see it this way. And 10 minutes later, I was able to put a web page up that showed just the view that he wanted to see. He wanted to see who's speaking where this quarter. Done. It was that easy. You can still see all the details of each of those conferences. So I clicked on this one down here, React Miami. And here's all the details about it. There's a link to the website. There's a link to the CFP. It's an in-person conference, right? And there's the CFP closing date. Nobody submitted a CFP for it yet. So anybody in the company can go and look at all this detail and say, oh, that one really interests me, and nobody submitted to it yet. And they can go and submit, or ask us to help them submit. It's really easy to understand and read because I color-coded stuff. So if it's black, you already missed the CFP closing date, sorry, right? Can't submit to that one. If it's pink, the closing date is within 7 days, so you need to get your act together pretty quickly if you want to submit, right? Green is still open, so, and it's not closing within the next week. And you can click on it to see when it is closing, but it's not closing in the next week. And you can sign up for notifications to tell you when CFPs are closing in 7 days. So you'll get a notification when a conference that is in an area you're interested in is closing within 7 days. Right? Oh, I need to submit to that, right? I wish I'd had that for this conference because I ended up writing my abstract for this talk sitting in the airport lounge as I was flying back from Portugal, totally jet lagged. It's a miracle I'm on stage here. If you hear of a conference and you want to tell us about it, simple form to fill out. All the detail, and almost all of it's required so that we don't have gaps in the spreadsheet, right? You don't have to tell us additional notes, but anything else is actually required so that all the fields are there. So we can sort by them and we can do various things with them. And we don't end up with, yeah, there's a conference coming up, but we have no idea when the CFP closes, right? Holes in the spreadsheet are really bad. Submitted conferences, we are now starting to vet so that when somebody submits a conference, we on the DevRel team sit down and go over that conference and does this make sense for us? Does this make sense for the company? Is this a market that we're in? Is this an area that we're in? Yeah, I know you want to go to Australia, but we're not even selling there yet, so maybe next year you get to go. But this one doesn't make sense for us. So we vet the conferences before we put them on that calendar so that the whole company doesn't see this thing in Australia and go, yeah, I want to go to Australia. And then we say, no, you can't go after you submitted the CFP and got your talk accepted, right? That's much more awkward. If you want to be a speaker, anybody in the company can sign up to be a speaker. You just got to tell us what you're interested in talking about and who you are and how to get a hold of you and whether or not you want to be notified via Slack or email when new conferences in your area of expertise come in. And so you check one of the boxes, and then when we get a conference in your area of expertise, you'll get a notice. Oh, a new conference with a CFP closing date of this is coming up. Go submit. You'll also, if you do that, you'll get another notice when the CFP is closing within 7 days, so you don't forget, right? Because I get a notice of a conference, like, yeah, I really want to submit to that. And I have ADD, and so like 5 minutes later, I've forgotten that the conference ever existed. And then I get a 7-day closing notice, it's like, oh yeah, I need to sit down and write that. And I can sit down and write that, right? You want to submit to a CFP. If you don't need our help and you just you have everything you need, again, fill out a simple form. Tell us what you're submitting. Tell us the name of your name probably, unless you're submitting this form for somebody else. Tell us what conference. Tell us what your abstract is. This is how we're building a library of talk abstracts that other people can use. We have not rolled that out yet, so you can't go choose somebody else's abstract. But in theory, you can go and say, hey, there's a really good abstract that's been accepted 100 times. Maybe I'll submit that one, right? And I can also go and find the presentation slides for that one, and I can adapt them to my style, and then I can give that talk. And the conference name, when you click on that, it shows all the conferences that we currently have in our system. And one of my advocates said, but the conference I'm submitting to isn't in there. That means you didn't fill out the first form telling us about the conference in the first place. You can't submit an abstract to a conference we don't know about. Kind of makes sense, right? Look, see, there's only 3 dots left. We're almost done. So, remember that library of abstracts. This is where we're building that. Because when you submit that form, you give us your abstract. And so we can look at that. And then we can go back and look at, well, these are the abstracts that were successful, right? Because your talk was submitted. You can also come back and tell us when your abstract is accepted or rejected. So we can start looking at which abstracts are successful and which are not. Don't submit that one. Don't do a similar talk to that one because nobody wants to hear it, right? Do this talk because everybody wants to hear that. Or tailor the abstract in this way because people want to hear that talk. We are not there yet. I'm still building this as I go. I'm building the airplane while I fly it. I don't recommend that, but it's what we do, right? We're still working on a better system for vetting talks. Currently, you submit a talk, and once a week we have a meeting with the dev advocates and the VP of developer relations, and we go through all the conferences that are coming up and say, is this a good one? Yes, no. Is this a good one? Yes, no. Here's why. Anybody wants to make a case for it? Okay, we'll approve it, and it'll go on the calendar. We need a better system for that. We need an easier mechanism to update data. Currently, so Airtable turned on this feature for a week, and then they turned it back off, and I was really angry because you can't update data via a form. The only way to update data is to go into that nightmarish spreadsheet, which thankfully I have not made anybody else have to do but me. And so we're looking for a way to get that. They say they're going to turn it back on. That will make my life a lot easier. Right now, I need to make this change. You tell me, and I'll go make it for you so that your life doesn't suck as bad as mine. Making this library accessible to all. That's not something that we've done yet. And building out that statistics of which talks get accepted, which talks don't, which is working, what's not. And just overall streamlining the process. Some folks have said there's too many forms. Well, there's 2, but okay. But streamlining that to make it less onerous to do this so that it's easier, and the easier it is, the more people will do it. And so if there's not a whole lot of friction in doing this, then we can get more people signed up to do it, right? So finally, I asked Chat GPT to explain the CF process to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And you can read that, and if it makes sense to you, great. It didn't make any sense to me. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't make sense to a 5-year-old either. I no longer have any 5-year-olds to ask, but what the fuck was my entire reaction to that, and it still is. So in case you think AI is going to take your job, don't worry, because it's not. It really isn't. It works well in the 20 words or less, but when you just ask it an open question like this, it's like, okay, you got a bunch of buzzwords there, and they're simple, but it still doesn't make any sense. So I hope that I was sort of able to explain not only what we're doing in terms of managing the CFP process, but why we're doing it. Because I know that a lot of companies, a lot of DevRel organizations have this need of managing CFPs, managing conferences, and almost you all laughed when you saw the spreadsheet, so you all probably have that spreadsheet. Yeah, I'm sorry. Because it's, that's how we do it, because there isn't another way. And I'm happy to talk to you about sort of the specific things that I built on top of Airtable to do that afterwards if you're interested. It wasn't that hard. It was actually fairly straightforward. So that's it. Feel free to contact me. I'm also, David GS. I'm, unlike Kareen, I am not the only one in the world, which is why I go by David G. Simmons. I actually worked at a company where there was another David Simmons, and then we both reported to the same manager, and things got really ugly. But I'm David GS at StarTree. I'm David GS at davidgs.com. I'm pretty much that everywhere. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
I saw hands going up for questions, so.
Hi.
And we definitely have some questions.
Okay.
Yep. I'll go first because I've got a mic. So
That's fair.
your Airtable is public, right?
What's that?
Your Airtable is public, right?
No, it is not.
Well, that's actually a serious question.
I
Can you make your Airtable public to avoid hours and hours and hours of duplicate work that we all do every day?
What I can probably do is sanitize it and make sort of the template of it public.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
But I'm again, since I'm collecting information about internal speakers and their email addresses and their internal Slack, not just Slack names, but their actual Slack ID, which is different, I really can't just turn that on to the world.
So we don't want to steal your work. Like, we'll contribute and full credit, and it's amazing work you're doing, but it would save, like, obviously. We all know the pain.
I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to do that, yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty much the same question. Like, I really liked your presentation. There were a lot of very useful points. Can you share the slides? Can you share any of the tools that you've presented here today to help us kickstart on our side?
Yes. So this talk will be posted on my Noticed site, which is actually, the easiest way is just davidgs.com. It's the easiest thing. And there's a link there to my Noticed site and everything else. I'll probably write up this whole talk as a blog post, and I will put it there rather than the StarTree blog, because they like to have technical StarTree-related blogs, not sort of, meta CFP. That's all right. It's easy to find, davidgs.com. Blog post will be there as soon as I write it, which maybe I can get to that soon, especially if I can hire any of you to fill these job positions, then I can have more time.
One more question.
I have some good news,
Oh.
which is that there's a tool that's been around a very long time. We used it at GitHub to run exactly this sort of program called EVMan. It's a Rails app that does all of this and more.
Oh,
There's a Docker image. You could download it, install it, It's great.
What's it called again?
EV Man, for short for Event Manager. It was written by a developer advocate at Red Hat 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, that's actually the one that Maddie wrote, right? I think
Did
Maddie
Maddie
wrote, yeah. No?
No, I don't think so. EV Man.
EV Man.
It's on GitHub under evmanhq/evman. We loved it.
Okay. Well, that might even make my life easier. I'll still write this up, but I'll point to that as well if that will, if that will make people's life easier. I'm all about that. Do we have time for one? No, we're kind of over. But we do have a break now, don't we?
We do have a
I
break
have
now.
one more question.
So I'm happy to answer more questions.
Can I have one? Did you try the calendar view? Can you superimpose different Airtables into one calendar view?
Yes, you can. And so there are actually, I only showed you one calendar view, but there are multiple views that I've put out. For instance, I put out the calendar view, and our CEO said, I love this, but I want to know who's speaking this quarter and where they're speaking. And it literally took me 5 minutes to put a view that was just the quarter, the current quarter, and who's speaking, what talks were accepted and who was speaking and all that information in a view on a calendar so that they could see. I'm not quite sure how that would work. We keep everything in pretty much the one horribly terrible spreadsheet. So, I mean, pretty much everything is there in terms of what conferences we know about, whether they're open, whether they've been submitted to, whether the CFP is closed. I mean, all that information is all contained in that one calendar view, right? Because you can see, the only thing I haven't coded for so far in the colors is a CFP has been submitted and or accepted. So that's the only thing that's missing from that right now. And that's because Airtable turned off the ability to update data from a form. So if anybody works at Airtable, please turn that back on. 5 days with it was not enough. Anything else? Yeah. Wait, you have a mic. Should we just give him his own mic?
I don't mind. I can take it home as well. You partially casually mentioned that you're looking for DevRel in India.
Yes.
So I have over 2,000 friends there, and I've just started. So if I mention it on Twitter now, will it make your life better or worse?
Yes. In the short term, it will make my life much worse. In the long term, it will make my life much better. So yes, please.
Okay, done.
I mean, actually, most of the senior management of my company is from India and has lots of contacts there, and we still can't find a suitable advocate in India. I don't know why, but please mention, yes.
Thank you,
Thank
David.
you.
No? We have a million questions more, David, but I think we can proceed with those on our coffee break.
Yes. I don't want to
Okay.
keep anybody from coffee and hopefully pastries.
We are already 10 minutes late, 12 minutes late, but it's all fine. We are enjoying this
Great.
question and answer session. Thank you, David.
Thank you.